Hi guys, this study was conducted on the effects of fatigue on sprint acceleration kinematics in male Gaelic footballers by myself, Peter McGill, at St Mary's University, Twickenham in London. So the effects of fatigue have been well documented in various field sports such as soccer, Australian rules and rugby, but are less acknowledged in Gaelic football, with only one study to date determining the fatigue status of elite Gaelic footballers during a week-long training camp. So when assessing fatigue, it's important to remember that fatigue will be specific to the working muscles. And previously, running protocols tend to be performed in isolation, such as yo-yo tests, the soccer-specific aerobic field tests. But the problem with these are that there's no considerations for the likes of eccentric muscle contractions at increased velocities, the jumping or landing activities that can also occur in field sports, or the high intensity demands such as contesting tackles. So it's important to remember these when we want to assess fatigue for a specific field sport. The demands of tackling in rugby has shown to have significant increases to subjective and perceptual fatigue in rugby players. This resulted in increased mean heart rates, ratings of perceived exertion, creatine kinase concentrations, in contrast to counter movement jump mean power decreasing, and perception of well-being decreasing as well. So when athletes perform tackles, they may be required to perform sprint accelerations succeeding tackles to win possession or block down an opponent. So various kinematic factors have been highly associated with sprint acceleration performance. These include ground contact times, joint angular velocities, stride lengths, joint orientation, as well as toe-off position in relation to the athlete's center of mass. And these can all become decreased due to fatigue in sports. For example, in repeated sprints, acceleration times increased in parallel with ground contact times. These were likely to be the result of decreased horizontal force due to suppressed muscle activity. In soccer, significant increases in sprint performance were due to decreased stride lengths, which was associated with decreased maximal knee extension and increased maximal hip flexion. In addition to this, Gaelic footballers have been capable of maintaining sprint acceleration velocities, even though work rates significantly decreased as a result of fatigue, which may have been reflected in altered kinematics, as athletes will tend to find ways to successfully perform tasks. So the aims of this study was to determine how fatigue influences sprint acceleration kinematics in male Gaelic footballers. So we hypothesized Gaelic footballers would be capable of maintaining sprint acceleration velocity post-training due to altered acceleration kinematics. So we used a mixed 18 male Gaelic footballers volunteered to take part in this study from a sub-elite intermediate Gaelic football team. Using a mixed design was implemented using a within and between subjects study. So what we did on the intervention day, participants performed a 15-minute warm-up, which was led by their football coach, including jogging, short and fast runs, Gaelic football skills. After the warm-up, participants performed 3 drop jumps from a 30 centimeter drop height onto a contact mat to collect reactive strength index as a determinant of external fatigue. Next, 2 10-meter sprint accelerations were performed and kinematics were captured at 240 hertz. Preceding this, participants were randomly separated into groups of 6 to perform tackling grids in a 6 by 6 meter square, where participants worked at a 1-to-3 ratio for a total of 8 sets. The intervention looked something like this on the screen, where players 1 and 2 would perform tackling for 30 seconds, while players 3, 4, 5, and 6 would stand on the edge and feed balls in when required. Next, players 3 and 4 would jump in for 30, and then players 5 and 6 would jump in for 30 seconds before all players took 30 seconds rest. Then the roles became reversed and the drill was repeated. Immediately post-intervention, 1 10-meter sprint acceleration was performed in a fatigued state to determine whether differences were evident. And then 30 minutes after, post-fatigue drop jump data was collected again, along with subjective measures, and the rating of fatigue scale and RPE were determined. So the dependent variables for our study included, for steps 1 and 3, included hip and knee flexion at touchdown, hip and knee extension at toe off, hip and knee angular velocity during stance, contact times, as well as mean and 10-meter velocities. Independent variables included time, so pre, before and after the intervention, and group, where the participants were split into 2 groups, fast or slow, depending on their velocity scores. To determine the questions in this study, if there was a difference within our subjects, we used paired samples t-tests, and to determine if differences existed between subjects, we used a 2-way MANOVA with Bonafri adjustments. All results were complemented by a corresponding measure of strength using effect sizes. So the results for within subjects came back with, there was significant decreases in mean velocity. Hip angle velocity for step 3 was also greater post-fatigue, was also slower for post-fatigue, and then knee angular velocity for step 1 also was slower post-fatigue. So between subjects, velocity was significantly faster pre-fatigue and post-fatigue for the fast group. In addition to this, knee flexion at touchdown during step 1 was significantly more flexed for the slower group, and there was also a step 3 contact time pre-fatigue was significantly faster for our faster sprinters. The differences between groups displayed that the slower sprinters did display faster contact times for step 1 post-fatigue, but compared to pre-fatigue, they displayed a much longer contact time for the 3rd step. They also displayed greater knee flexion moments upon touchdown. We speculated this to be a method to lessen impact forces due to down-regulated excitation-contraction coupling, which may have resulted from stretch shortening cycle fatigue. The faster sprinters did display greater decreases in mean velocity and 10-meter velocity compared to the slower group, which may have been reflected in greater suppression of muscle activity in the knee extensors as well as the gluteus maximus. So in comparison to others, our participants did display greater knee flexion angles during toe off, and they also displayed more extended hip angles during toe off, which was likely a method which likely resulted in an increase in vertical force production, resulting horizontal force production, as their toe off position may have likely been closer to their center of gravity. So to conclude, we determined that the Gaelic footballers did experience moderate decreases in sprint acceleration velocity following a fatiguing training session. They also displayed greater hip extension angles during toe off, while their knee joint angles were in a more flexed position. This was likely a method to increased vertical force production while limiting horizontal force production, which may have been a result of reduced stiffness due to impact forces during ground contact.